I caught my sister in my fiancé's arms 6 weeks before our wedding. By sunrise, I was married to Baltimore's most feared crime boss. Some betrayals do not simply break your heart. They expose how long you have been carrying people who never intended to carry you back. That night, Evelyn Hart stood inside the apartment she had built, staring at the man she trusted and the sister she had protected. The wedding favors were still in her hands. Her ring was still on her finger. Outside, summer rain washed the harbor streets clean, but nothing inside her felt salvageable. Then one wrong turn led her into a waterfront club, a gunfight, and the path of Roman DeLuca. Stay until the end, because this is not only a story about revenge, it is about power boundaries and the moment a woman stops asking permission to choose herself, like the video and comment where you are watching from. 10 hours earlier, Evelyn Hart still believed the worst thing waiting for her that evening was an unpaid catering deposit. Baltimore had been trapped beneath August heat since sunrise. The pavement outside the market shimmered beneath her shoes, and the air carried the mixed smell of gasoline, hot brick, and salt drifting inland from the harbor. Evie stood beside her silver sedan with 2 cardboard boxes pressed against her ribs. Sweat gathered beneath the collar of her blouse. Her purse kept sliding down her shoulder, her phone would not stop vibrating, and the iced coffee she had bought nearly an hour ago had already gone warm. Inside the boxes were 300 miniature jars of Maryland wildflower honey. Each jar wore a navy ribbon tied carefully around its neck. A cream-colored card hung from every ribbon printed in elegant gold letters. Evelyn and Graham, October 12th, a sweet beginning. Evie stared at the words until they seemed to belong to strangers. Her phone buzzed again. She balanced one box against the car door and checked the screen. The caterer. 4th call today. She let it ring until the screen went dark, then watched a voicemail notification appear beneath 3 unread messages from the florist and 2 from the bakery. Another message appeared from her mother. "Did you remind Sienna about the fitting? She sounded upset when I spoke to her." Evie closed her eyes. Of course, Sienna was upset. Sienna had been upset about the dress, the shoes, the hairstylist, the rehearsal dinner menu, and the fact that Evie had chosen navy instead of pale pink for the bridesmaid colors. Every decision surrounding Evie's wedding had somehow become evidence that Sienna was being neglected. Evie could already hear her sister's voice. "I just want to feel beautiful standing beside you." The sentence sounded innocent until someone noticed how often Sienna used it while asking Evie to pay for something. Evie shifted the box higher against her ribs and typed a reply. I reminded her yesterday. Her appointment is at 4. She sent it before adding that Sienna was 26 years old and capable of remembering an appointment without being managed by her older sister. The words remained safely inside Evie's head where most of her honest responses lived. A woman pushing a shopping cart passed behind her. A little girl sat in the child seat holding a melting red popsicle in both hands. The woman glanced at the ribbons. "Wedding favors." Evie smiled automatically. "Is it that obvious?" "They are beautiful." The woman looked at Evie's bare arms struggling around the boxes. "Do you need help?" For a second, the question confused her. Then Evie shook her head. "I have it." She always had it. The woman wished her congratulations and continued toward the store. Evie watched her go. The little girl dropped a line of red syrup across the front of her dress. Her mother stopped. The cart laughed and wiped it away with a napkin. Something about the small tenderness made Evie's chest ache. She pushed the feeling aside and lifted the second box. Her phone vibrated again before she reached the trunk. This time it was Graham. "Crazy day. Client review ran long. I may be late tonight. Love you." Evie stared at the message. She typed, "You still have not sent the final catering payment," then deleted it. She typed, "The bakery needs your signature on the revised invoice." Deleted that too. Finally, she wrote, "Love you too." She hit send and hated how quickly the familiar words disappeared from the screen. Graham Cole was the kind of man people described as a good choice. He was 33, well-dressed, professionally successful, and so polite that strangers trusted him within minutes. He worked as a financial consultant for families wealthy enough to consider money a private language. He knew how to speak to older clients without sounding condescending. He remembered the names of their grandchildren. He wore tailored suits and quiet colors and never ordered the most expensive bottle of wine at dinner. When Evie first introduced him to her mother, Margaret had squeezed her hand beneath the table and whispered, "This one feels safe." At 27, safe had sounded romantic. At 30, it sounded like an insurance policy she had never read closely. Graham never raised his voice. He never punched walls. He never disappeared for days or made promises involving private islands and impossible futures. He paid his bills on time. He checked the oil in Evie's car. He knew which fork to use at charity dinners. He also believed clean laundry appeared naturally in drawers. He believed refrigerators restocked themselves. He believed birthdays, travel plans, family dinners, and wedding deposits moved from possibility to reality through some invisible system that had nothing to do with him. That invisible system was Evie. Whenever she asked him to handle something, he smiled, kissed her forehead, and said, "You are so much better at this than I am." For years, she had heard admiration. Lately, she had begun to hear an excuse. The drive from the market to Federal Hill should have taken 15 minutes. It took nearly 30. Traffic crawled beneath a white sky. Horns sounded around construction barriers. The air conditioner in Evie's car pushed weak air against her face while local radio hosts argued about baseball. Baltimore passed outside her windows in familiar pieces. Brick row houses pressed shoulder to shoulder along narrow streets. Murals brightened the sides of old buildings. Restaurant workers carried crates through back doors. Tourists moved towards the inner harbor with cameras and bottled water. Evie kept one hand on the wheel and used the other to increase the air conditioning, though the dial was already turned as far as it could go. At a red light, her phone displayed another message from Sienna. "The seamstress is being rude." Evie waited. A second message appeared. "She keeps saying she cannot change the neckline again." Then another. "Can you call her?" Evie looked at the clock on the dashboard. 3:41. The appointment had not even started. She pressed the call button. Sienna answered immediately. "Thank God." "What happened?" "The woman is acting like I am difficult." Evie watched the traffic light remain red. "What did you ask her to change?" "The neckline. Again. It makes my shoulders look broad." "Sienna, we chose that cut together." "You chose it. You said you loved it." "I was trying not to make everything about me." Evie closed her eyes for half a second. A horn sounded behind her. The light had changed. She drove forward. "What do you want me to do?" "Just talk to her. She listens to you." The words should have sounded like a compliment. Instead, they felt like another bag being placed in Evie's hands. "I am driving. You can call when you get home. I still have to unload the favors and meet Graham about the caterer." Sienna went silent. Evie knew that silence. It was not the absence of feeling. It was preparation. When Sienna spoke again, her voice had softened. "I know your wedding matters more than everything right now." Evie's fingers tightened around the steering wheel. "That is not what I said. You did not have to. Sienna, I just want to look beautiful beside you." There it was. Evie exhaled slowly. "I will call the seamstress." Sienna brightened at once. "Thank you. I knew you would understand." The call ended. Evie tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. Her own reflection stared back at her from the rearview mirror. She looked tired, not dramatically tired, nothing anyone would comment on, just a faint darkness beneath her eyes and tension around her mouth that no concealer had managed to hide. She had spent most of her life understanding Sienna. When their father was dying, Sienna missed a hospital visit because she had gone to a music festival in Virginia. Margaret had asked Evie not to mention it. "Your sister cannot handle hospitals the way you can." When Sienna dropped out of graduate school after one semester, Evie helped write the emails explaining her withdrawal. When Sienna lost her apartment after spending rent money on a trip to Miami, Evie paid the deposit on a new place. When Sienna borrowed clothes, they returned stained, stretched, or not at all. Every apology came wrapped in wet eyes and a trembling voice. "I did not mean for this to happen." No one ever asked why things kept happening wherever Sienna stood. Evie reached her street shortly after 4. She and Graham lived on the 3rd floor of a restored brick row house 3 blocks from Riverside Park. The building had narrow marble steps, black shutters, and a blue front door Evie had loved the first time she saw it. The apartment was not large, but she had made every room feel intentional. She found the antique mirror in a warehouse sale. She refinished the dining table on the back landing during a humid July weekend. She selected the brass lamps after weeks of comparing prices. The blue floral wallpaper in the living room had cost more than she planned, but when morning light touched it, the room looked calm and almost timeless. Graham had watched her compare samples across the floor. "Whatever you want," he had said. At the time, Evie had smiled. Now climbing the stairs with the wedding favors cutting into her palms, she wondered when she had started confusing a lack of interest with kindness. The building smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old wood. Mrs. Donnelly from the second floor had left a pair of gardening shoes outside her door. A radio played somewhere behind the walls. Evie reached the third floor and rested one box against the railing while searching through her purse. Her keys were tangled with a silver heart Graham bought during their first weekend in Annapolis. E and G forever. She touched the engraving with her thumb. The apartment door was already unlocked. Evie frowned. Graham always locked it even when he was home. She pushed the door open with her shoulder. The apartment was cool and strangely quiet. Not empty. Quiet. There was a difference. Empty rooms relaxed. This room seemed to be holding its breath. Evie stepped inside and nudged the door closed with her foot. "Graham." No answer. She set her keys in the ceramic bowl on the entry table. The small sound carried through the apartment. His brown leather shoes sat near the sofa. One was upright. The other lay on its side. Graham never left them there. He complained that shoes made the room look cluttered. Evie moved toward the kitchen. His phone rested beside the sink. A glass of water stood on the counter, thin lines of condensation running toward the base. His suit jacket hung over a chair. Graham. Still nothing. Evie placed the boxes on the kitchen island. Several honey jars clicked softly together. A ribbon had come loose from one of them. She smoothed it flat with her finger. A sweet beginning. She heard a sound from the living room, a quick breath, then fabric moving against the wall. Evie stopped. The air seemed to press against her skin. Her body understood before her mind allowed the thought to form. She walked toward the living room slowly. Late afternoon light entered through the blinds in thin gold bands. Dust floated above the hardwood floor. The blue wallpaper glowed behind the sofa. Graham stood against it. His shirt was open, his belt hung loose. Sienna was pressed between his body and the wall. One of Graham's hands was buried in her hair. Sienna's black silk top had slipped from one shoulder. Evie recognized it. It belonged to her. For one suspended moment, no one moved. Evie's attention fixed on a single blue flower in the wallpaper. Graham's shoulder had folded it at the edge. She had installed that section herself after the contractor left an air bubble beneath the paper. She remembered standing on a ladder while Graham watched a game in the next room. She remembered smoothing the flower with both palms until it lay perfectly flat. Now it was crushed beneath him. Evie. Graham said her name like she had entered the wrong apartment. He stepped back so quickly that his elbow struck the wall. Sienna pulled the silk strap over her shoulder. Her eyes widened. Then the tears came. Not shock, tears. The order mattered. Graham began buttoning his shirt with trembling fingers. "This is not what it looks like." Evie looked at his belt, then at Sienna's swollen mouth, then at the lipstick smeared near Graham's jaw. "What does it look like?" Her voice sounded distant, almost polite. Graham swallowed. "It just happened." Sienna made a small broken sound. "It was my fault." Evie turned toward her. Sienna's mascara had smudged beneath one eye. The effect made her look wounded rather than guilty. "I came over because I was upset," Sienna said. "I felt like I was losing you." Evie said nothing. Sienna took a step forward. "The wedding has taken over everything. We never talk anymore. Graham was only trying to calm me down." Graham nodded too quickly. She was emotional. Evie looked at him. "And you comfort people with your belt open." His face reddened. "No, that is not what I meant. We were talking and it became something else." "How long?" Graham stared at her. Evie repeated the question. "How long has this been happening?" "It has not been happening." Sienna looked at the floor. Evie noticed. That small movement answered her. Her heartbeat slowed. The room sharpened around her. She remembered Graham knowing Sienna had changed her hair before Evie had seen it. Sienna mentioning a restaurant where Graham claimed to have met a client. The two of them laughing quietly at dinner about something neither explained, Graham knowing the code to Sienna's apartment. Evie had placed each moment into a separate box because opening them together would have required an answer she did not want. Now every lid had come off at once. "How long?" Sienna wiped at her cheeks. "Evie, please. Do not say my name like it is hurting you." Graham moved closer. "It was only a few times." Sienna looked at him sharply. The truth entered the room without anyone inviting it. Evie almost laughed. A few times. Not one mistake. Not an accident born in a single weak moment. A private arrangement repeated until carelessness exposed it. Graham lifted both hands. "I know how this looks. You keep saying that, because you are not letting me explain." Evie looked around the room. The lamp she had found, the curtains she had steamed, the table she had repaired, the framed engagement photograph taken near the harbor. Every beautiful object carried evidence of her attention. Somehow she was the least considered person in the room. Sienna whispered, "I never wanted to hurt you." Evie turned to her. "You wore my clothes." Sienna glanced down at the camisole. "I borrowed it weeks ago." "You came into my home wearing something you took from my closet, and you touched the man I was going to marry." Sienna's mouth trembled. "I was jealous." Graham closed his eyes. Sienna continued before he could stop her. "You always have everything." Evie stared at her. "What exactly do you think I have?" "The career, this apartment, Graham, the wedding. Everyone trusts you." Evie looked at the open boxes of honey on the kitchen island. She thought about the unpaid caterer, the florist, the seamstress waiting for Evie to solve another problem. She thought about the nights she worked late, then came home to plan a wedding Graham called theirs. She thought about Sienna's rent, their father's hospital room, their mother's endless requests for patience. "You think things appear because people like me better?" Sienna looked away. "I think you do not understand what it feels like to stand beside you." "No," Evie said quietly. "You do not understand what it costs to be me." Graham reached for her wrist. Evie looked down at his hand before it touched her. "If you put your hand on me, you will regret which one you chose." He stopped. Fear crossed his face. It was not fear that she would hurt him. It was fear that the calm woman who organized his life had disappeared. Evie looked at her engagement ring. The diamond was simple and tasteful. Graham had chosen it with his mother because he said Evie preferred practical things. She twisted it once. Her skin resisted before the ring came free. Graham watched it in her palm. "Do not do this." Evie walked to the kitchen island. She placed the ring beside the wedding favors. It looked small beneath the gold lettering. A sweet beginning. Graham followed her. "Evie, I love you." She looked at him. "No. You love being loved by me." "That is not true." "You love that I remember your mother's birthday. You love that I schedule your dentist appointments. You love that I know which client needs a handwritten card and which one hates phone calls. You love that I built a life around you so carefully that you never had to ask who was holding it together." His face tightened. "I can fix this." "You mean I can fix it?" Sienna began crying harder. "Please do not hate me." Evie turned toward her sister. For a second, an old instinct moved inside her. Comfort her, lower your voice, keep the family from breaking. It was the same instinct that had guided her since childhood. The instinct felt less like love now and more like a chain she had mistaken for part of her body. "You wanted him because he was mine," Evie said. Sienna shook her head. "That is not fair." "Was he worth it?" Sienna opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Graham stared at Evie as if waiting for instructions. That was when she finally understood him. Even now, standing with his shirt incorrectly buttoned, he expected Evie to manage the ending. She picked up her purse. "Keep the apartment." Graham blinked. "What?" "Keep the furniture, keep the wallpaper, keep each other if either of you still wants what is left. You cannot just leave." Evie walked toward the door. Sienna followed her. "I am still your sister." Evie stopped with her hand on the doorknob. She looked back. Sienna stood barefoot in Evie's silk camisole. Graham hovered behind her, unable to choose whether to comfort Sienna or chase Evie. "No," Evie said. "Right now you are a woman wearing my clothes in the home I paid for." She opened the door. Graham called her name. Evie stepped into the hallway and closed the door behind her. The air outside was warm and stale. Mrs. Donnelly's radio still played downstairs. Someone laughed in another apartment. Nothing in the building understood that Evie's life had ended in the room behind her. She walked toward the stairs. The door opened again. Graham stood in the frame with bare feet and an open collar. "Where are you going?" Evie looked at him. For the first time all day, she answered honestly, "I do not know." She descended the stairs. By the time she reached the sidewalk, her hands had begun to shake. Evening had settled over Federal Hill in shades of copper and violet. Porch lights glowed against brick. A dog barked behind a fence. The smell of grilled meat drifted from a restaurant at the corner. Evie stood beneath a street lamp and realized everything she owned was upstairs. Her laptop, her passport, her clothes, her grandmother's necklace, her work files, her toothbrush. Her life remained inside the apartment with two people who had treated it like an unlocked room. Her phone began ringing. Graham. She declined the call. Sienna called next. Evie declined again. Then her mother's name appeared. Evie stared at it until the call ended. A message arrived seconds later. "Graham called me crying. Sienna is hysterical. Please do not do anything dramatic before we discuss this." Evie read the words twice. Her mother had not asked whether she was safe. She had not asked what happened. She had already decided Evie's reaction was the greatest threat to the family. Another message appeared. "You know how sensitive Sienna is." Evie lifted her eyes toward the third-floor windows. Two shadows moved behind the curtains. Graham and Sienna were still together in the apartment Evie had built. Something inside her became very quiet. She turned off her phone. A taxi rolled slowly toward the intersection. Evie raised her hand. The driver stopped at the curb. She climbed into the back seat and closed the door. The car smelled like coffee, old leather, and rain trapped in fabric. The driver looked at her through the mirror. "Where to?" Evie opened her mouth. No address came. Her closest friend lived in Chicago. Her office was locked. A hotel would require questions she could not answer. Her mother would ask her to calm down before allowing her to speak. The driver waited. Evie looked back at the apartment. "Just drive. Anywhere in particular?" "Somewhere no one knows me." The taxi pulled away from the curb. Federal Hill disappeared behind them. The streets changed as they moved east toward the industrial waterfront. Restaurant lights gave way to warehouses, chain fences loading yards, and empty buildings with dark windows. Rain began as a soft tapping against the roof. Evie pressed her bare ring finger into her palm. The skin held a pale circle where the ring had been. The driver glanced at her again. "You all right?" The word yes rose automatically. Evie had used it all her life. "Yes, I can handle it. Yes, I understand. Yes, I will take care of her. Yes, everything is fine." She watched the rain distort the harbor lights. "No," she said. The driver nodded once. He did not ask her to explain. Several minutes later, he pulled beside a dark brick building near the water. A small brass crown hung above the entrance. There was no bright sign, only a black door beneath a rusted awning. Music moved faintly through the walls. The driver turned around. "This place work?" Evie looked through the rain-streaked window. Nothing about the building belonged to her old life. No wedding party would come here. No client would expect to find her inside. No member of her family would think to look beyond that door. She paid the driver and stepped onto the wet pavement. Rain gathered in her hair and slid beneath her collar. For one moment, she stood beneath the brass crown and listened to the harbor breathing in the darkness. Then Evelyn Hart opened the black door and walked inside. The black door closed behind Evie, and the rain became a distant murmur. Inside, the hollow crown smelled of old wood whiskey and damp coats. Amber light hung low over the room. A blues guitar moved through the speakers with the slow ache of something that had survived too much to complain. Roman said it as if he were discussing weather. "He wants to meet my wife." Evie set the coffee cup down before her hands could betray how tightly they were shaking. "When tonight?" She looked at the gold band on her finger. Less than 12 hours earlier, that hand had worn another man's promise. Now it carried the name of a stranger feared by half the city. What exactly does a man like Vincent Marzano expect from dinner? Roman leaned against the window frame. He wants to know whether the marriage is real. It is legally real. That is not what he is asking. Evie understood. Marzano wanted to know whether she was useful, whether Roman cared about her, whether hurting her would create pain, hesitation, or weakness. She lifted her eyes. And if he decides I'm only paperwork, he will look for another opening. And if he decides I matter, Roman's expression remained controlled. Then he will try to use you. Evie looked toward the curtains where morning light cut across the polished floor. Yesterday, her greatest concern had been whether the bakery could add another tier without changing the price. Now a criminal rival wanted to examine her like a possible weapon. She pushed the covers aside. I need to go back to my apartment. Roman's posture changed. No, Evie stood. The room shifted slightly, but she waited until it steadied. My clothes are there. My laptop is there. My passport and work files are there. I will send people. I will go. It is not safe. She looked at him. I stopped being safe when your enemies learned my name. That is exactly why you should stay here. No, that is why I decide what happens to the pieces of my life that are still mine. Roman's jaw tightened. Evie continued before he could interrupt. I walked out with nothing because I had just watched two people destroy everything I thought I understood. I am not letting Graham choose what I get to keep. For several seconds, Roman said nothing. His eyes moved over her face, searching for fear or uncertainty. Evie had both. She simply refused to let either make the decision. Roman checked his watch. You have 20 minutes to shower. The bathroom looked like a private hotel built for someone who disliked softness. Black stone covered the walls. Brass fixtures caught the morning light. Thick white towels waited beside a glass shower large enough for 3 people. Evie stood beneath the hot water and watched rainwater-dried bourbon and a faint trace of blood disappear down the drain. She scrubbed her hands twice. The cuts in her palms stung. When she closed her eyes, she saw the bar again. Marco drawing his weapon. Roman turning before anyone else understood the threat. Glass falling through amber light. Then Graham appeared in her mind. His open shirt. Sienna's mouth. The blue flower crushed against the wall. Evie opened her eyes and increased the water temperature until her skin burned. When she stepped from the shower, clothes waited on the vanity. Dark jeans, a cream silk blouse, black flats, all in her size. Evie stared at them. Roman could arrange clothing for a stranger before sunrise, yet Graham had once forgotten her birthday dinner, until she reminded him while sitting across from him at the restaurant. She dressed slowly. Downstairs, Roman waited in a kitchen of dark wood steel and pale stone. Tall windows overlooked a courtyard shaded by old trees. 2 men in suits stood near the back entrance. They straightened when Evie entered. Roman sat at the island, reading from a tablet. A plate of toast rested beside an untouched cup of coffee. He slid the plate toward her. Eat. Evie took 1 piece. How did you know my size? I pay people to notice details. That is unsettling. It is efficient. She took a bite. Her stomach had no interest in food, but it accepted the toast without protest. Roman placed the tablet in front of her. The news article filled the screen. A photograph of Roman leaving a charity event appeared beside a professional photograph Evie's company had used for its website. Below them, the headline called her a mystery bride. The article had already been updated with details about her education, career, family, and abandoned wedding plans. Evie read the first paragraph twice. They found all of this in a few hours. Most people leave their lives scattered across public records and social media. My mother reads this site. Roman stood and collected his jacket. Then she knows you married well. Evie looked up. That is not comforting. It was not intended to be. The drive to Federal Hill took place in silence. Roman drove the black sport utility vehicle himself. Another vehicle followed behind them. 2 men sat in the back seat, quiet and watchful. Evie kept turning the ring around her finger. The gold felt too warm. When they reached her street, another car was already parked across from the building. 2 of Roman's men stood near the entrance, pretending to study their phones. Evie stepped onto the sidewalk. Her apartment building looked smaller than it had the day before. Nothing about the brick walls suggested that her life had ended inside them. Roman came around the vehicle. You stay beside me. Evie took out her keys. My name is on the lease. That does not stop bullets. Neither does standing close to you. It improves the odds. She started up the steps. Roman followed. At the third-floor landing, Evie slid her key toward the lock. The door opened before she touched it. Graham stood in the doorway. He wore the same trousers from yesterday and a white undershirt wrinkled across his chest. His hair stood unevenly and his eyes were red. Relief crossed his face when he saw her. Evie. He reached toward her. Then Roman stepped into view. Graham's hand stopped. His eyes moved from Roman's face to the men waiting behind him. Who is this? Roman did not raise his voice. Her husband. The word entered the apartment before any of them did. Graham laughed once. It was a nervous, broken sound. No. Evie walked past him. The apartment smelled of coffee candles and Sienna's citrus perfume. Her stomach tightened. Graham followed. This is not funny. It was not meant to be. He looked at her left hand. The color drained from his face. You cannot be serious. Evie held his gaze. I am married. You met him yesterday. Yes, that is insane. No, insane would have been staying here while you explained why sleeping with my sister was emotionally complicated. Graham looked toward Roman. You took advantage of her. Roman's expression did not change. Evie answered before he could. He offered me terms. I accepted them. You were upset. I was clear. You do not know who he is. I know who you are. The bedroom door opened. Sienna appeared wearing Graham's university sweatshirt. Evie felt the wound reopen, not because Sienna had stayed, because some part of Evie had still hoped shame might have sent her home. Sienna's eyes filled immediately. Evie. Roman's men entered behind them. Roman spoke without looking away from Graham. Collect her clothing, work equipment, personal documents, and jewelry. Handle everything carefully. The men moved toward the hallway. Graham stepped in front of them. You cannot come into my apartment and take things. Evie looked at him. My name is on the lease. You left. I survived a difficult evening. That is not the same as surrendering ownership. Sienna moved closer. Can we talk alone? Evie turned toward her. You lost the right to ask for privacy when you used mine. Sienna flinched. Graham stepped between them. She is trying to apologize. Evie stared at him. Even now he positioned himself as Sienna's defender. You are still protecting her. I am not protecting anyone. You stood in our living room with your belt open and blamed her emotions. Now you are standing in the same room asking me to be gentle. Graham's face tightened. I made a mistake. You made choices. It did not mean anything. Sienna looked at him. The pain in her face was real this time. Evie noticed, but she felt no satisfaction. Meaninglessness did not make betrayal smaller. It made it cheaper. She walked past them and entered the bedroom. The bed was unmade. Graham's shirt from the previous day lay near the dresser. Sienna's earrings rested beside Evie's perfume. Evie opened the top drawer and removed her passport, bank documents, and a velvet case containing her grandmother's silver necklace. Her hands began to shake when she touched it. She closed the case and held it against her palm. Behind her, Sienna stood in the doorway. I did not plan it. Evie did not turn. I swear. You knew where you were. I was jealous. Evie faced her. Sienna's cheeks were swollen from crying. You always know what to do, Sienna said. Everyone trusts you. Everyone looks at you like you have everything under control. So you wanted to prove I did not. I wanted someone to choose me. Evie studied her sister. There was a time when Sienna's pain would have become a task. Evie would have sat beside her, asked questions, traced the hurt backward until she found a way to make it manageable. She no longer wanted to manage it. You wanted to be chosen so badly that you took the man I was preparing to marry. Sienna looked down. I know it was wrong. No. You know you were caught. That is not fair. Fair would have been speaking to me before you entered my home. Sienna's mouth trembled. Do you hate me? Evie looked at the young woman in front of her and saw several versions at once. The little girl who crawled into Evie's bed during thunderstorms. The teenager who borrowed dresses and forgot to return them. The adult who had turned envy into permission. I do not know what I feel yet. Sienna began to cry. Evie walked past her. In the living room, Roman's men had packed 2 boxes. Evie moved toward the bookshelf and took her work headphones, several notebooks, and the ceramic mug she bought after her first promotion. A framed photograph stood near the lamp. Evie and Sienna at 17 and 13 standing on a beach in North Carolina. Their hair blew across their faces. Both were laughing so hard that their eyes had nearly closed. Evie picked it up. For a moment, the room blurred. She remembered Sienna holding her hand in the ocean because she was afraid of the waves. She remembered promising that nothing would take them away from each other. Her fingers loosened. The frame fell. Glass shattered across the hardwood. Sienna gasped. Graham said Evie's name softly. A tear moved down Evie's cheek before she could stop it. She wiped it away. Roman crossed the room. He crouched among the broken glass and lifted the photograph by one corner. He brushed the fragments from its surface with his thumb. Then he stood and placed it in Evie's hand. His voice was low. "Leave the glass." She looked at him. Let them clean something for once. He did not tell her to forgive Sienna. He did not tell her that family deserved another chance. He did not call her strong. He simply recognized that she was tired. Evie closed her fingers around the photograph. 10 minutes later, the boxes were carried downstairs. She placed her apartment key on the kitchen counter. Graham stood near the blue wallpaper. The damaged flower remained visible behind his shoulder. "Evie, please." She stopped at the door. "I love you." The words had once held enough power to rearrange her life. Now they barely crossed the room. "No," she said. "You loved being forgiven before you apologized." She left. Roman followed. Outside, the morning had brightened. Sunlight shone across a wet pavement, making the street look freshly washed. Roman opened the passenger door. Evie looked at him. "You did not have to come inside." "Yes." "Why?" "Because you asked to go back. That is not an answer. It is the only one you need." She climbed into the vehicle. Roman's phone rang before he reached the driver's side. He listened without speaking. His face became unreadable. When he ended the call, he entered the vehicle and started the engine. "Marzano knows you returned to the apartment." Evie looked toward the third-floor window. "How he has people watching places connected to you." Graham and Sienna appeared briefly behind the curtain. The vehicle pulled away. Evie watched the building shrink in the side mirror until trees hid it. "Does he still want dinner?" "Yes, what time's 7?" Evie checked her own phone. "I have a work meeting at 9. Roman looked at her. "Cancel it." "No." His eyes returned to the road. "This is not a normal day. My clients do not know that. They will survive one missed meeting." I said I keep my job. You said many things while exhausted. You agreed while fully conscious. A quiet sound came from one of the men in the back seat. Roman looked into the mirror. The sound stopped. Evie folded her hands in her lap. "I am not giving up the only part of my life that still belongs entirely to me because Vincent Marzano wants to examine your paperwork." Roman remained silent through 2 intersections. Then he said, "Fine." Evie turned toward him. "Fine, you attend the meeting. Then you prepare for dinner." The DeLuca estate sat behind stone walls north of the city. Iron gates opened before the vehicle slowed. The main house stood beneath tall trees built from gray stone and dark brick. Security cameras followed the car along the drive. Inside, Roman led Evie to a study lined with walnut shelves and old books. A large desk faced windows overlooking the courtyard. "You can work here." Evie placed her laptop on the desk. "Thank you for the permission." Roman crossed his arms. "I am trying not to lock you in a room." "How generous." Their eyes met. Something had changed between them inside the apartment. Perhaps it happened when Roman knelt in broken glass without hesitation. Perhaps it happened when he let her speak for herself. Evie did not know what to call it. Roman looked away first. "I will be nearby. Is that supposed to comfort me?" "No, it is supposed to warn everyone else." He left. At 9, Evie joined the meeting. Her manager, Daniel Price, appeared on the screen from a glass conference room. 3 co-workers sat beside him with coffee and open notebooks. Daniel frowned. "Your background looks different." Evie glanced at the shelves behind her. "Plumbing issue at my apartment. I had to relocate. To a private library, something like that." Daniel studied her face. "Are you all right?" Graham called reception this morning. Her stomach tightened. What did he say that it was personal? He sounded upset. Then he can remain upset. One of her co-workers looked down quickly. Evie opened the presentation. Let us begin with campaign performance. The numbers steadied her. Click rates had increased. Mobile traffic remained strong. Customers were abandoning purchases after reaching the payment page. Evie explained that the problem was not awareness. It was trust. Halfway through the meeting, the study door opened. Roman entered without knocking. His sleeves were rolled to his elbows. White tape wrapped 2 knuckles. A bruise darkened the edge of his jaw. Blood marked 1 cuff. Evie continued speaking, but Daniel leaned closer to his camera. Is someone there? Roman crossed to the sideboard and poured water into a glass. Wrap it up. Evie pressed the mute button. Do not speak during my meeting. You are in my study. You are in my meeting. Roman looked at the laptop, then back at her. Are you really discussing customer trust while my men remove a tracking device from a delivery truck? Yes. Some of us respect scheduled commitments. A brief smile touched his mouth. It changed his face enough to disturb her concentration. Dinner is at 7, he said. I remember. Sophia left clothes upstairs. Who is Sophia? The only person in this house who argues with me about fabric. Then we may get along. Roman looked at her for a moment. I suspect you will. He left. Evie unmuted the call. Daniel was staring at her. Everything all right? She gave him the calm expression she used with difficult clients. Absolutely. As I was saying, awareness means nothing when the audience no longer believes the promise. By 6:30, Evie stood before a mirror in a guest bedroom. A black silk dress lay against her body with quiet precision. It had no unnecessary decoration. It did not ask for attention. It assumed it. Her hair fell loose around her shoulders. A velvet box waited on the dressing table. Inside was a diamond ring. Evie stared at the stone. It was large enough to turn a private lie into public fact. The door opened. Roman appeared in the mirror. He wore a black suit without a tie. The bruise on his jaw made him look more dangerous, not less. His eyes moved over her once, then returned to her face. Evie lifted the ring. This is subtle. Marzano understands symbols. This could sink a small boat. Roman stepped closer. May I? The question surprised her. She held out her hand. Roman took the ring and slid it onto her finger beside the plain gold band. His touch was careful. Far too careful for a man who carried a gun as naturally as a wallet. The diamond settled against her skin. Evie looked at their hands in the mirror. His fingers were scarred. Hers still carried faint cuts from the bar. You look different, Roman said. Different from what the woman who walked into the hollow crown. Is that a compliment? It is an observation. Try again. A pause. Roman's voice lowered. You look like trouble I should have recognized sooner. Evie met his eyes in the reflection. For 1 second, neither moved. Then Roman stepped back. The restaurant occupied a private floor beneath an old hotel near the harbor. Heavy curtains covered the windows. Dark brick walls absorbed the light. The staff moved quietly and disappeared as soon as each task was complete. Roman sat beside Evie at a long table. 4 of his men stood near the exits. Across the room, 3 men waited for Marzano. Vincent arrived 10 minutes late. He was older than Evie expected. Silver hair, navy suit, polished shoes. A gold ring gleaming on his smallest finger. He moved like a man who believed arriving late was proof that time belonged to him. Roman. Vincent. Marzano looked at Evie. So, this is the bride. Evie lifted her glass. Evelyn DeLuca. His smile deepened. You accepted the name quickly. I have had a busy day. He sat across from them. A waiter poured wine and left. Marzano studied Evie openly. A brand strategist becomes the wife of Roman DeLuca overnight. That is an impressive career change. I believe in transferable skills. Marzano laughed. It contained no warmth. Does she always answer like this? Roman looked at him. She answers for herself. Marzano leaned back. Then perhaps she can explain why I should believe this marriage is anything more than ink on paper. Evie felt Roman's stillness beside her. Marzano wanted him to react. She answered first. The state recognizes it. The trust recognizes it. Your opinion seems unnecessary. Did he pay you? That is a rude question. This is not dinner. Evie glanced at the untouched wine. No, the wine is too nervous. One of Roman's men shifted near the wall. Marzano's smile faded slightly. He turned his ring around his finger. You had another wedding planned? Yes, with Graham Cole. Evie kept her expression still. He is a respectable man. Respectability photographs well. And your sister? The room tightened. Evie placed her glass on the table. What about her? She seems fragile. Roman's hand moved slightly beneath the table. Evie rested her fingers against his wrist. Not for comfort. A warning. Let me answer. Marzano noticed. Family can become complicated when emotions rise. Evie looked at him. You did not invite me here to discuss emotions. No. I invited you because Roman's enemies need to understand what his wife means to him, and have you decided not yet? Marzano leaned forward. Every man has something he cannot afford to lose. Evie felt Roman's pulse beneath her fingers. Steady, perhaps. Your mother still lives in Towson. Your sister works at a design studio near Canton. Graham leaves his office at 6 most nights. Roman's chair moved slightly. Evie tightened her hold on his wrist. Marzano watched her. He expected fear. He expected pleading. Evie leaned forward. You have misunderstood my family. Marzano smiled. Blood matters when it begins to spill. My sister slept with my fiancé. My fiancé blamed her feelings. My mother called to remind me not to upset them. Silence settled across the table. Evie continued. You cannot threaten me with losing people who already decided I was expendable. Marzano's eyes changed. For the first time, he looked at her as something other than decoration. Roman turned his hand beneath the table and closed his fingers around hers. Marzano noticed that too. The dinner ended without dessert. Outside, the harbor air was cool and damp. Roman led Evie to the hotel rooftop while his men brought the vehicles around. The city spread below them in lights reflected across black water. Evie stood near the railing. Roman remained several feet away. You took a risk in there. So did you when you married me. Vincent will now assume you matter. Evie looked at him. Do I? Roman's expression became unreadable. The silence lasted too long. Evie understood that he did not know how to answer without giving away more than he intended. She crossed the space between them. Then she kissed him. It was not gentle. It carried anger, fear, exhaustion, and the need to make one choice that belonged entirely to her. Roman remained still for half a second. Then one hand settled at her waist. He kissed her back with controlled force. The city disappeared. There was only the cold railing behind her, his hand against her side, and the dangerous steadiness of his mouth. Roman pulled away first. His breathing had changed. This was not part of the agreement. Evie looked at him. Neither was being shot at. His phone rang. Roman answered. The warmth left his face as he listened. When a pause. Do not send anyone until I arrive. He ended the call. What happened? Evie asked. A freight coordination office stopped responding. 2 trucks disappeared. A third is transmitting false location data. Roman opened a map on his phone. Several routes glowed across the screen. Evie looked at the timestamps. The same intervals repeated across 3 different incidents. Roman started toward the stairs. I need to get you home. Evie caught his arm. Do not send your men to the last location. Roman looked at her. Why? She enlarged the map and pointed to the repeated delays. Because Marzano is not stealing your cargo. Roman's eyes returned to the screen. Evie traced the routes with one finger. He is measuring how quickly you react. No one looked at her for long. That felt like mercy. 2 men played cards near the back wall. A woman in a red dress sat alone with a glass of gin. Behind the bar, a broad man with silver hair polished a tumbler while watching the room through the mirror. Evie chose the last stool. Her knees felt weak when she sat down. As long as she had been moving, she had been able to keep the images behind her eyes. Now they returned. Graham's open shirt, Sienna's bare shoulder. The crushed blue flower on the wallpaper. Her mother's message. Please do not do anything dramatic. The bartender approached. What can I get you? Bourbon. He reached for a bottle. Evie placed cash on the bar. Leave it. His eyes moved briefly to her bare ring finger, then to the mark where the ring had been. He set down a glass and a dark bottle. Evie poured until the bourbon nearly reached the rim. The first swallow burned. The second did not. She watched a drop slide down the outside of the glass and disappear into an old stain on the bar. Her phone sat silent inside her purse. She had turned it off, but she could still feel the weight of everyone waiting on the other side of the screen. Graham would be apologizing, Sienna would be crying, her mother would be deciding which version of the betrayal caused the least inconvenience. Evie poured again. A voice beside her said, "The third one is where regret becomes a decision." She did not turn. "I already chose the man I planned to marry. The bourbon has competition." The stool beside her scraped against the floor. A man sat down. Evie looked over, ready to tell him that grief was not an invitation. The words never reached her mouth. He wore a black suit that looked too expensive for the room, yet nothing about him seemed out of place. His white shirt was open at the throat. Dark hair swept back from a hard face marked by a faint scar near the jaw. His hands rested on the bar. Large hands, scarred knuckles. No wedding ring. A black stone set in gold circled one finger. He did not look handsome in the clean, harmless way Graham did. There was nothing harmless about him. The bartender appeared immediately. He took the house bottle from the counter and replaced it with a clear bottle that had no label. He poured the stranger a drink without asking and moved away without waiting for payment. The card players near the wall lowered their voices. The woman in red stopped moving her glass. Evie noticed all of it. She looked at the man. "Are you famous or dangerous?" He raised his glass. "In Baltimore, those conditions usually overlap." His voice was low and calm. It did not ask the room to listen. It expected it. Evie turned back toward her bourbon. "You're overdressed for a place that smells like wet carpet and bad choices." His gaze moved to the wedding ribbon still caught on her sleeve. "We all arrive in costume." Evie looked down. The small cream tag clung to the fabric. "Evelyn and Graham. A sweet beginning." She tore it free and dropped it into an empty ashtray. The man watched the movement. "Bad night." Evie laughed once. The sound was thin and unfamiliar. "My sister was against my living room wall with my fiancé 6 weeks before our wedding." He took a drink. "Messy." Evie turned toward him. "That's all you have? You did not come here for sympathy." She studied him. "What did I come here for?" His eyes moved over her face carefully as if pain had a shape he recognized. "A place where no one asks you to forgive anyone." The answer landed deeper than she wanted. Evie looked into her glass. "I have 300 guests, a paid venue, a cake taller than my niece, and no groom." "Do not cancel." She looked at him again. "What?" "Do not cancel the wedding." "I think you missed the part where the groom was busy destroying his future against floral wallpaper." "I heard you." "Then what exactly are you suggesting?" He set his glass down. "Replace him." Evie stared at him. Then she laughed. It came louder this time. "Of course, I will walk outside and ask the first available man whether he has formal shoes and a clean criminal record." The stranger did not smile. "That depends on whether you want revenge or freedom." Evie's laughter faded. "Tonight, I am not sure I know the difference. Revenge needs an audience. And freedom. Freedom does not care who watches." Something in his expression told her he was not talking only about her. Evie lifted her glass. "What are you escaping?" He looked toward the mirror behind the bar. "Who said I was escaping?" "Men who are not escaping do not drink alone in places where the bartender keeps a private bottle." "I am not alone." "You sat beside a stranger having a nervous collapse." "That still counts." For the first time, the edge of his mouth moved. Not a smile. Something close enough to be dangerous. Evie felt an unexpected change in her pulse. Not trust, not attraction, recognition. Two people sitting at the far end of a room because neither wanted to be found. The front door opened. The music continued, but the room seemed to stop around it. 3 men entered carrying rain on their shoulders. The first was thick through the chest with a shaved head and a broken nose. His right hand stayed inside his coat. The 2 behind him spread out without speaking. The bartender placed his towel beneath the counter and disappeared through a door near the kitchen. Evie's throat tightened. The man beside her remained seated. The newcomer smiled. "Roman DeLuca." The name moved through the room like a cold wind. Evie had seen it in headlines. DeLuca Freight acquires harbor property. Union witness withdraws statement. Federal investigation delayed. Graham had once mentioned the DeLuca family after drinking too much at a client dinner. Men who owned warehouses, trucking companies, dock contracts, and the silence surrounding all of them. Roman lifted his glass. Marco, Vincent wants to speak with you. Vincent has my number. He wants to speak now. Roman turned slightly on the stool. If Vincent Marzano sent you into my city with 2 boys and a pistol you bought from a parking lot, he must be losing confidence. Marco's face darkened. The man behind him shifted. Evie saw a hand move toward a waistband. Roman saw it first. His shoulders relaxed. That frightened her more than panic would have. Marco pulled a gun. Roman moved. The shot struck Evie's body before she understood it as sound. Marco cried out and staggered back, one hand gripping his shoulder. His pistol hit the floor. The second man drew his weapon. Roman fired again. A bottle exploded behind the bar. Down! Roman's hand closed around the back of Evie's neck and forced her from the stool. She struck the floor hard. Broken glass cut into her palm. Gunfire tore through the room. Wood splintered above her. Bourbon poured over the edge of the bar and soaked into her blouse. Evie curled beneath the counter with one hand over her head. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She thought of Graham. Safe, careful Graham. A man who complained about driving through heavy rain. A man who disputed restaurant charges under $20. A man Evie had chosen because nothing dangerous seemed to live inside him. The shooting ended. For several seconds, Evie heard only the ringing in her ears. Then rain against the windows. A man groaning near the entrance. The blues song still playing. A shadow fell over her. Roman crouched beside the bar. A thin line of blood marked his cheek. His gun remained in one hand. "Are you hit?" Evie stared at him. "You shot them. Answer me." She checked her arms, chest, and stomach. "No." Roman caught her wrist and pulled her upright. Her legs nearly failed. Marco and the other men lay near the entrance. One held his shoulder. Another clutched his thigh. The third pressed a hand against his arm. They were alive. Blood spread across the floorboards beneath them. Sirens sounded in the distance. Evie reached for her purse. "I'm calling the police." Roman caught her elbow. "The police know this place. 3 men were shot. They will survive. That is not the point. It is the only point that matters right now." She pulled against his grip. "I do not know you." "Marco does." Evie froze. Roman looked at the ashtray. The wedding ribbon lay inside it with her name turned upward. "He heard your name. He saw your face beside me. So Vincent Marzano will decide you matter. I do not matter to you. He does not know that." The sirens grew louder. Roman guided her toward the rear hall. Evie resisted. "What happens if he decides to find out?" Roman looked directly at her. "He will test how much pain you can survive before I respond." The words emptied the anger from her body and replaced it with cold. Roman opened the rear door. Rain struck them immediately. They crossed a narrow alley toward a black sport utility vehicle with dark windows. A man stepped from the driver's side. Roman said, "Passenger." The man obeyed without question. Roman opened the door for Evie. She stayed in the rain. "No. Evie." She flinched at the sound of her name. He had heard it once, yet he spoke it as if placing something sharp on a table. "You can hate me inside the car. Outside it you may not live long enough." Evie looked toward the mouth of the alley. Blue lights flickered beyond the buildings. She climbed inside. Roman took the wheel. The vehicle tore into the wet streets. Evie struggled with the seatbelt. Her fingers refused to work. Roman reached across her, clicked it into place, then returned his hand to the wheel. The gesture was quick and practical. It nearly broke her. She looked out the window. "Who are you?" "Roman DeLuca." "I know the name now. That is not what I asked." He took a corner hard. "I own freight companies. You shot 3 men over freight. Ports create emotional disagreements. Do not talk to me like I am stupid because I am scared." Roman glanced at her. Something in his expression changed. "Fair." He removed a phone from his jacket and placed it in her lap. "Call Elliot." "Who is Elliot?" "My attorney." "Why am I calling your attorney?" "Because I am driving." She stared at the contact list. Elliot, Nico, Doctor, Father Gabriel, no last names. Roman said, "Tell him to meet us at Pier 47. Tell him to bring the trust documents, the emergency filing packet, and Judge Warren's private number." Evie turned toward him. "What kind of lawyer has a judge's private number?" The kind who is still useful. She pressed the contact. A man answered before the first ring finished. Roman, this is Evie. Silence. Then a cautious voice. Who is Evie? The woman who sat on the wrong bar stool. Roman's mouth shifted slightly. Evie repeated the instructions. Something crashed on the other end of the call. Elliot cursed. Did he say trust documents? Yes. Is he hurt? Roman answered without looking away from the road. No. Elliot heard him. Oh, thank God. I will meet you there. The call ended. Evie held the phone in both hands. I was supposed to choose cake flavors tonight. Roman's grip tightened on the wheel. I know. No, you do not. Her voice cracked. You do not know what it feels like to walk into your own home and realize everyone you trusted believed you were too blind to see the knife. You do not know what it feels like to be humiliated by people who still expect you to protect their feelings. Roman remained quiet. Rain swept across the windshield. Then he said, You would be surprised what I know about knives. The city thinned around them. Brick buildings gave way to chain fences loading yards and sleeping cranes. The river appeared between warehouses, black beneath the storm. Roman turned through a guarded gate. An abandoned shipyard warehouse stood ahead. One light burned above a side entrance. Inside, armed men moved among stacked crates. A balding man in a gray suit waited beside a metal desk with a leather case pressed against his chest. When he saw Roman, relief crossed his face. Then he noticed Evie. His relief disappeared. You brought a civilian. Evie wiped rain from her face. I have had better introductions. Roman walked to the desk. Do you have the documents? Elliot opened the case. I have them, but this is insane. Explain it to her. Elliot looked at Evie. Roman's father placed the DeLuca port holdings inside a family trust. The final transfer happens at 6 this morning. Evie glanced at a clock on the wall. 4:52. Elliot continued. Roman receives full voting authority only if he is legally married when the transfer occurs. Evie stared at Roman. Why? Because my father believed family was another form of obedience. Elliot spread papers across the desk. Vincent Marzano discovered the clause. If Roman is unmarried when the transfer happens, Marzano can challenge control-freeze key accounts and persuade several board members to defect. Evie looked at the marriage license. Her name was already typed on one line. How did my name get there? Roman answered. Elliot works quickly when frightened. Elliot pushed his glasses up. This can be filed through an emergency civil process. Both parties must consent. Once the trust recognizes the marriage, the assets are protected. Evie laughed softly. 2 hours ago I had a fiancé. 1 hour ago men tried to kill me. Now I am standing in a warehouse discussing marriage with a man who carries a gun. Roman stepped closer. You can refuse. Elliot looked at him in disbelief. Roman, she can refuse. Evie folded her arms. And if I do, I find another way. There is no other way, Elliot said. Roman did not look at him. Evie stared at the documents. What do I receive? My name, Roman said. Protection, legal security. Enough money to begin again when this ends. I do not want to be purchased. Then name your terms. Evie looked at him. The warehouse seemed to quiet. Marzano never reaches me. He will not. Graham learns I am married before he tells people I was abandoned. Roman nodded. You keep your job. I had not said that yet. You were going to. Evie held his gaze. I keep my job, my money, and control of my own life. Agreed. Her voice lowered. And I am not your property. Roman stepped into the light. No. The answer came without hesitation. You are not. Elliot placed a pen beside the marriage license. Evie looked at the signature line. Evelyn Hart. 10 hours earlier, the name had belonged to a woman planning seating charts and answering messages from people who needed her. Now it waited beside Roman DeLuca's. She picked up the pen. Why me? Roman looked at her bare finger. Because you walked away from the people who betrayed you without taking anything that did not belong to you. You met me tonight. I have known men for 20 years who could not do what you did. Evie's hand trembled once. Then it became still. She signed. Roman took the pen from her and wrote his name beneath hers. Elliot gathered the papers and hurried toward the exit. The room tilted. Evie reached for the edge of the desk. Her fingers missed. Roman caught her before she struck the concrete. His arm closed around her waist. Her cheek pressed against his chest. He smelled of rain smoke and expensive wool. "What kind of man marries a stranger covered in another man's blood?" she whispered. Roman looked down at her. "The kind who knows blood is never the worst thing a family can put on you." Darkness folded over the warehouse. When Evie opened her eyes again, morning light was cutting through heavy curtains. She sat up too quickly. Her head throbbed. A simple gold band rested on her left hand. A knock sounded. Roman entered carrying coffee. He had changed clothes. A charcoal shirt covered the blood-stained cuff, but the cut remained on his cheek. Evie looked at the ring. "Did we—" Roman placed the coffee beside her. "No. You did not let me finish. You were going to ask whether I took advantage of an unconscious woman who smelled like bourbon and gun smoke." Heat moved into her face. That was the general direction. "My housekeeper changed your clothes. A doctor checked you. I slept down the hall." Evie reached for the coffee. Her phone lay beside the cup, fully charged. The screen showed 27 missed calls. Graham, Sienna, Margaret. A news alert waited beneath them. Baltimore shipping executive Roman DeLuca marries mystery woman before dawn. Evie opened the article. Her name appeared in the second paragraph. Roman stood near the window. The filing was accepted at 5:41. The trust recognized the marriage. Evie looked at him. "And Marzano?" Roman's phone rang. He answered, listened, then ended the call. His face became still. "Marzano knows." Evie's fingers closed around the coffee cup. Roman looked at the gold band on her hand. "He wants to meet my wife. He is measuring how quickly you react." Roman stared at the glowing roots on his phone. Wind moved across the rooftop, carrying the smell of rain and harbor water. Below them, traffic passed through the streets in thin lines of white and red. Evie enlarged the map. The first truck had disappeared near a warehouse on Bruning Highway. 6 minutes later, Roman's security team had been dispatched. The second signal failed near a private yard south of the river. Again, 6 minutes passed before another team moved. The third truck had started transmitting false information only after both response units were already in motion. Evie pointed toward the screen. "He is not interested in the trucks." Roman's eyes narrowed. "What is he interested in your habits?" She traced the route with one finger. "He creates a problem. You respond. He watches which people move first, which vehicles leave the estate, which locations receive additional protection, and how long it takes you to make a decision." Roman studied the timestamps. "The missing cargo is valuable, valuable enough to guarantee you respond." His expression changed. Not disbelief, recognition. He pressed a contact on his phone. "Nico." A man answered immediately. Roman's voice became sharp. "Recall both teams. No one enters the Bruning warehouse. Shut down the false tracker and move all active communications to the secondary network." A pause. "No, do not explain it over the phone. Just do it." He ended the call. Evie looked at him. "You believe me, I believe the pattern." That was almost respectful. Roman placed the phone inside his jacket. "You can celebrate after we confirm no one died." They left the rooftop. The kiss remained between them unmentioned, but impossible to ignore. Roman walked half a step ahead as they descended the stairs. Evie watched the set of his shoulders and the controlled speed of his movements. Nothing about him suggested confusion. Only the hand he had placed at her waist remained vivid against her skin. Outside, his men had already opened the vehicle doors. Roman spoke to the driver. "Take us to the coordination center." One of the men looked at Evie. Roman noticed. "She comes with me." No one questioned him. The freight coordination center operated from a renovated warehouse near the port. From the street, the building looked ordinary. Inside, an entire wall displayed maps of Baltimore private terminals, trucking routes, storage facilities, and maritime schedules. Men and women sat before banks of monitors. Phones rang, printers released documents. Voices moved quickly beneath white industrial lights. The atmosphere reminded Evie of a corporate launch room during a crisis, except several people wore visible weapons. Nico Marino met them near the entrance. He was in his early 40s, broad-shouldered, with dark hair cut close to his head and the expression of a man who trusted facts more than introductions. "The teams are returning," he said. "We lost contact with the first truck. The second is empty." "Empty?" Roman asked. "The cargo was transferred before the tracker failed." Evie walked toward the nearest screen. What was inside? Nico looked at Roman. Roman answered, "Medical supplies." Evie turned. "Legal supplies." A silence followed. Roman's expression gave nothing away. "Mostly." Evie nodded once. She had known his companies did not survive entirely through clean contracts. Knowing it in theory was different from standing in a room where armed people protected the details. She looked back at the screen. "Show me the response records from tonight." Nico did not move. Roman said, "Do it." A technician pulled up a timeline. Evie studied the sequence of calls, vehicle departures, security changes, and network activity. She asked for the previous 2 weeks, then the previous month. Nico folded his arms. "We do not have time for a business presentation." Evie continued reading. "I agree." He frowned. She pointed to a column. "These small disruptions began before tonight. One camera failure near a warehouse, a delayed gate code, a driver reporting a damaged tire, a false alarm from a storage unit. Each event appeared insignificant alone. Together they formed a sequence. Someone had been testing Roman's system repeatedly." Roman moved closer. "How long? 23 days?" Nico looked at the display. "That is impossible." Evie turned toward him. "Why? We would have noticed. You noticed each problem. You did not connect them." The room became quieter. Evie moved to another screen. Every response reveals information. Which team arrives. Which supervisor receives the call. Which roads you use. Whether Roman comes personally, even the order in which you secure buildings tells someone what you value. Nico stared at her. "You learned this from advertising. I learned that people are predictable when they believe they are making independent choices." Roman looked toward the room. "Lock every route. No standard response procedures until we identify the breach." Nico hesitated. "That will slow operations. That is the point." Roman turned toward Evie. "What else?" The question carried through the room. Several people looked at her. Evie felt their attention settle on the black dress, the diamond ring, and the title she had received less than 1 day ago. They did not see a strategist. They saw Roman's bride, a stranger standing inside a system built by people who had known each other for years. She looked back at the screens. Who has access to route changes, security dispatches, and emergency protocols? Nico answered. 6 people. "I want the access records for all 6. That information is restricted." Roman's voice remained calm, not from her. Nico's jaw tightened. He gave the order. For the next 3 hours, Evie studied login times, altered files, remote connections, and internal reports. Roman remained nearby. He took calls, issued instructions, and spoke privately with his captains. He did not interfere with her work. Shortly after midnight, one of the missing drivers was found alive beside a service road. His hands had been bound. He had been struck in the head but could still speak. The cargo was gone. The attackers had asked him only one question. "How long does it take Roman DeLuca to arrive?" Evie leaned back from the screen. "There." Roman crossed the room. She pointed at an access report. The emergency network had been opened from an authorized account 30 seconds before the first false signal appeared. The account belonged to Elliot Graves. Nico swore under his breath. Roman became completely still. "Bring him here." Elliot arrived 20 minutes later wearing a wrinkled suit and an expression of growing alarm. 2 men escorted him into the main room. He looked at Roman. "What happened?" Roman placed the access report on the table. Elliot read it. The color left his face. "I did not do this. Your credentials did. I was in court this afternoon." Evie looked up. "What time did you leave after 5? The access occurred at 7:17. I was driving. Alone, yes." Roman stepped closer. "Who else has your credentials?" "No one." Roman's voice lowered. "Think carefully." Elliot began breathing faster. "I am telling you the truth." Nico took his phone from his pocket and placed it on the table. "Then explain this." The device showed a photograph captured outside Elliot's apartment. A dark vehicle had been parked across the street for 3 consecutive nights. Elliot looked at it. His hand started to shake. Roman saw the reaction. What did they take? Elliot said nothing. Roman grabbed the front of his jacket. The lawyer struck the table hard. What did they take, my brother? The room froze. Roman released him. Elliot gripped the edge of the table, struggling to breathe. They took Daniel 6 days ago. Why did you not tell me they said they would send him back in pieces? His voice broke. They showed me a video. He was tied to a chair. They cut his face while I watched. Roman's expression hardened. And you gave them access. Temporary access. I thought I could limit it. You thought wrong. I know. Roman reached inside his jacket. Evie stepped between them. The movement happened before she could consider the danger. Roman's hand stopped near the weapon. Move. No. Nico and the others watched in silence. Roman's eyes became cold. He gave Marzano access to my network. He was coerced. He endangered everyone in this room. Killing him does not restore the system. It prevents him from opening it again. Evie held his gaze. Then you lose the only person who knows exactly how Marzano contacted him. Roman said nothing. Elliot stood behind her, breathing unevenly. Evie continued, You can punish him later. Right now he is useful. He betrayed me. He broke under pressure. To the dead there is no difference. The words struck the room with quiet force. Evie understood what Roman meant. Men could still die because Elliot had been afraid. A family member had been used as leverage, and that fear had opened a door. She also understood something else. If Roman killed everyone who failed under pressure, he would eventually rule only empty rooms. Lock him down, Evie said. No phone, no outside communication. Keep him guarded. Roman's eyes remained on hers. And then we use the access. Nico frowned. To do it, Evie looked toward the wall of maps. Feed Marzano the response he expects. Roman studied her for a long moment. Then he removed his hand from inside his jacket. Explain. Evie walked to the main display. Marzano believes Elliot's credentials are still clean. We let him keep believing that. She selected 3 storage locations. We create a false shipment, something valuable enough to attract him. Nico shook his head. He will verify it. Then give him information he can verify. Trucks, drivers, manifests, movement orders. What happens when he attacks? No one is there. Roman moved beside her. He will expect security. We give him security. Visible guards who leave at a predictable time, cameras that appear to fail. A route that looks vulnerable because he believes he discovered it. Nico looked at Roman. This is a large operation to build on her instinct. Evie turned toward him. It is not instinct. She opened a series of network reports. Marzano has used the same delay pattern 6 times. He waits until the first response team commits before creating a second emergency. He is trying to divide your people. She pointed to a private warehouse near the harbor. We let him believe your highest value shipment will move through here tomorrow night. When he sends his men, we track every vehicle, every signal, and every account connected to the attack. Nico still looked unconvinced. Roman asked Evie, Can you build it? She met his eyes. Yes. Roman turned to the room. Then build it. The order changed something. People moved, screens updated, calls began. Nico stepped beside Evie and asked what she needed. Not Roman, her. Evie removed the diamond ring because it struck the keyboard while she worked. She placed it beside the monitor and began assigning patterns. They created false shipping documents. A technician built a believable tracking history. Nico selected vehicles. Roman moved personnel away from vulnerable locations. Elliot, under guard, reconstructed every message he had received from Marzano's intermediaries. By dawn, the false operation looked real. Evie stood at the center of the room drinking coffee that had gone cold. No one questioned why she was there anymore. At 7:14, Elliot's compromised account received a silent access request. At 7:16, someone copied the false manifest. At 7:19, 3 vehicles connected to Marzano's organization left a property in Dundalk. Nico looked at Evie. They took it. Roman watched the vehicles move across the map. Let them. The attack came that night. Marzano's men entered the warehouse through a loading door left intentionally unguarded. They found empty crates and hidden cameras. Roman's teams followed every vehicle leaving the area. Two drivers led them to a storage facility connected to one of Marzano's shell companies. Another returned to a private residence owned by a city inspector. The operation revealed more than a stolen cargo route. It exposed the beginning of Marzano's political network. When the final vehicle stopped moving, voices around the coordination center rose with relief. Nico struck the table with one hand. "We have him." Evie exhaled. For the first time in 2 days, she allowed herself to believe a plan had worked. Then a technician turned from another screen. "There is someone inside the warehouse." Nico frowned. Impossible. A heat signal near the rear office. Roman reached for his phone. A camera image appeared. An older man lay on the floor near a doorway. He wore a security uniform. Evie stared at the screen. "We cleared the building." Nico's face tightened. He was off duty. The man had returned to retrieve medication from his locker. Marzano's team had struck him before realizing the warehouse was empty. He was alive, but blood spread beneath his head. Evie felt the room move away from her. Roman issued orders for medical assistance. No one blamed her. That made it worse. The security guard was named Thomas Riley. He had worked for one of Roman's legitimate companies for 11 years. His wife met them at the hospital. She was small, gray-haired, and still wearing house slippers beneath her coat. Roman spoke with the doctor. Evie stood several feet away while Mrs. Riley watched through the glass as nurses moved around her husband. "He was not supposed to work tonight," she said. Evie did not know whether the woman was speaking to her. He forgot his heart medication. Mrs. Riley rubbed both hands together. "He always forgets something." Evie looked toward the bed. Thomas had survived the attack, but his skull was fractured. The doctors expected him to recover. Expected was not a promise. Outside the hospital, Evie turned on Roman. "You said the building was empty." Roman stood beneath the entrance lights. "I said it had been cleared. That means empty. It means everyone scheduled to be there was removed." He went back. "Yes, and no one considered that possibility. There are thousands of possibilities." Evie folded her arms tightly against her body. "Then we should have delayed. If we delayed, Marzano might have discovered the trap. So we accepted the risk." Roman's face remained calm. "We reduced the risk," to whom the question hung between them. Roman looked toward the street. "In this world, certainty is expensive and usually false." Evie stepped closer. "That cannot be your answer every time an innocent person gets hurt. It is not an answer. It is the truth. Then the truth is not good enough." His eyes returned to hers. "You think an organization like mine survives with clean hands? No." The anger in her voice surprised both of them. "I think dirty hands still choose what they touch." Roman said nothing. Evie felt the weight of the security guard's blood inside her plan. She had entered Roman's world believing intelligence could control danger. Now she understood that intelligence only changed where danger landed. "I will not help you become more efficient at hurting people who never chose this life. You believe I want that I do not know what you want." Roman's expression shifted. The accusation reached somewhere he kept protected. "You married me without knowing. I married you because armed men knew my name." And now Evie looked at him. "Now I need to know what kind of empire I am helping you protect." The ride back to the estate was silent. Roman did not answer her. Evie did not ask again. For the next several days, she continued working inside the coordination center. She reviewed vendor accounts, dispatch procedures, and financial patterns. Her skills gave her access to places no one expected her to see. She discovered duplicate invoices from a fuel supplier, a security contractor connected to Marzano, a consulting company that existed only on paper. Each discovery strengthened her position. It also showed her how deeply corruption had settled into Roman's legitimate businesses. Some of it had begun under his father. Some continued because no one had questioned profitable habits. At the next leadership meeting, 6 senior men sat around Roman's table. Evie entered carrying a folder. Conversation stopped. One, Captain Anthony Rizzo, looked at Roman. "Is this now a family meeting?" Evie took the empty chair beside Roman. "No. If it were, I would have brought my sister. She has experience destroying shared property." No one laughed. Roman almost did. Anthony looked at the folder. "With respect, Mrs. DeLuca, this room handles port security." Evie opened the documents. "Then you may want to know why your security company has paid $800,000 to a vendor with no employees." She placed the invoice in front of him. Anthony read it. The confidence left his face. Evie continued. The vendor shares an address with a property company controlled by Marzano's cousin. Roman looked across the table. How long? 14 months, Evie said. Anthony stared at the papers. That account was approved before I took control, and no one reviewed it after. A captain near the window leaned forward. What else did you find? Evie distributed the remaining pages. By the end of the meeting, no one asked why she was sitting there. They asked which accounts needed to be frozen. Roman listened while Evie spoke. He did not interrupt. When the meeting ended, Anthony remained behind. He looked at Evie. I misjudged you. Yes. His eyebrows lifted. You are not going to make that easier, no. He nodded slowly. Fair. After he left, Roman closed the door. You enjoy making powerful men uncomfortable. Evie gathered the papers. I enjoy accuracy. You could have warned Anthony privately. He would have explained the problem privately, too. Roman leaned against the table. People are beginning to follow your instructions. They are following useful information. That is how it begins. Evie looked at him. What begins power? The word should have felt exciting. Instead, she saw Thomas Riley in the hospital bed. Power did not protect the guard. No. Roman's answer came quietly. No, it did not. He stepped toward her. I spoke with his wife. His medical care and salary are covered. If he cannot return, his pension will be paid in full. That does not undo it. I know. For the first time, Roman did not defend the system. He simply accepted the damage. Evie looked at him. What was in the missing trucks? Roman remained silent. She waited. Medication, he said. Some legal, some stolen before reaching distribution. Anything else? No weapons, no people, no narcotics. Why? Because I ended those routes when I took control. Evie studied his face. Your father allowed them, yes, and you stopped them most. Most is not all, no. His honesty unsettled her more than a lie might have. Roman moved toward the window. My father believed money was clean once it reached his hand. I did not. But you kept parts of his empire. I kept the parts that allowed me to remove the rest without starting a war I could not control. Evie understood the logic. She did not yet accept it. Roman looked back at her. You asked what kind of empire you are protecting. Yes, one that is not clean, one that is less cruel than it was, one that will become something else if I live long enough. And if you become comfortable before, then his eyes held hers. That is why you are still in the room. The answer followed her for the rest of the day. That evening, Evie's professional life collapsed. Daniel called while she was reviewing campaign data in the study. His face appeared tense on the screen. We need to speak privately. Evie closed the door. What happened? He sent her a link. A news article opened. The headline described Evie as an ambitious strategist who had abandoned a respectable fiancé to marry a criminal millionaire. A photograph showed her entering the Hollow Crown. Another showed Roman placing the diamond ring on her finger outside the hotel. The article quoted an unnamed source close to Graham. According to the source, Evie had behaved erratically before the wedding and had become obsessed with status. Sienna was described as a distressed younger sister caught in the middle of a family crisis. Evie read the paragraph twice. Her hands became cold. Daniel continued. A client saw this. Do you believe it? That is not the immediate issue. It is my immediate issue. He looked away. The company is placing you on temporary leave while legal reviews the situation. Evie stared at him. My performance has not changed. No, my clients are satisfied. Yes. Then you are suspending me because someone wrote a story. We are protecting the firm. The sentence sounded familiar. Protecting the firm, protecting Sienna, protecting Graham. Everyone used protection when they meant Evie would carry the consequence. Daniel lowered his voice. I am sorry. Evie ended the call before he could offer sympathy. Roman entered several minutes later. He had already seen the article. I will handle Graham. No, he released private information. You do not know that. I know enough. You want to destroy him because you are angry. Yes. The honesty stopped her. Roman came closer. He used your silence to make himself innocent. I know. I can end his career before morning and prove every sentence they wrote. Roman's jaw tightened. He deserves consequences. He does. Evie opened her laptop. But they will come from me. She spent the next 6 hours tracing the article. The photographs had been supplied by a public relations contractor. The contractor had received payment from a consulting company connected to one of Marzano's shell corporations. Evie documented each connection. Then she wrote a statement. No accusations, no emotional details, no attempt to win sympathy. She confirmed that her engagement ended following a serious personal betrayal. She stated that her marriage to Roman was legal, voluntary, and unrelated to her professional work. She refused to discuss private family matters. Finally, she sent Daniel the financial records connecting the article to Marzano's network. The firm's legal department called before noon. Her leave was reversed. The article remained online, but several publications updated their coverage. Graham's version stopped looking like a confession of heartbreak and began looking like part of a coordinated attack. Roman found Evie in the courtyard after the calls ended. She sat beside the fountain with her shoes removed, her feet resting against cool stone. He held 2 glasses of whiskey. She accepted one. I would have been faster, he said. At ruining Graham. At resolving the problem. I did resolve it. Roman sat beside her. Yes, they listened to water move through the fountain. Evie looked at his wrapped knuckles. What happened to your mother? The question surprised him. His face became distant. She left. How old were you? 9. Did she choose to go? Roman stared into the glass. I do not know. Evie waited. My father controlled everything. Money, doors, drivers, friends. He called it protection. Roman turned the glass slowly. One morning she was gone. He said she had abandoned us. No one was allowed to speak her name again. You never looked for her for years, and nothing's certain. The courtyard lights reflected in his eyes. The marriage clause in the trust was his final joke. He believed a man without a wife could not build a lasting empire. Evie looked toward the dark windows of the estate. So he tried to control your marriage after death. Yes, that is why you agreed when I said I was not property. Roman's voice lowered. I know what a house looks like when one person owns everyone inside it. Evie thought of the apartment in Federal Hill. Her life had not been violent like Roman's childhood, but ownership could hide inside softer habits. Graham believed her labor belonged to him. Sienna believed her forgiveness belonged to the family. Margaret believed Evie's strength belonged to anyone who needed it. Roman had given her a dangerous name, armed protection, and a place beside him. Yet each time she said no, he stopped. She looked at him. Why did you pull away on the rooftop? Roman's eyes moved to her mouth, then back. Because you had been betrayed less than 1 day earlier. You kissed me back. I am not a saint. No one has accused you. His hand rested on the stone between them. Evie placed her fingers beside his. Not over them. Beside them. Roman looked down. You should know something. What the trust is secure. Her fingers became still. The legal challenge failed this morning. Marzano cannot take control through the marriage clause. Evie turned toward him. What does that mean? It means you no longer have to stay. The words created an emptiness she had not expected. Roman stood. There are papers in the study. Evie followed him inside. An envelope rested on the desk. She opened it. Petition for annulment. Financial settlement. $5 million. Permanent security arrangements. A new residence under her name. Legal protection against any liability connected to Roman's organization. Evie looked at him. You prepared all of this? Yes. When before the wedding documents were filed, you expected me to leave. I expected you to want the choice. Do you want me to leave Roman's face revealed nothing? That is not the question. It is mine. He stepped closer to the desk. If I ask you to stay while my enemies remain near you, while you live in my house, while my name controls who approaches you, then the request is not clean. Nothing about us is clean. No. His voice became softer. But the choice can be. Evie looked down at the annulment papers. Part of her wanted him to tear them apart. Part of her wanted him to admit that the thought of her leaving frightened him. Instead, he gave her the one thing everyone else had refused to give. A door without guilt attached to it. She closed the envelope. I need to see Graham and Sienna. Roman's eyes hardened. Why to end it with my own voice? He did not argue. The meeting took place the next afternoon in a quiet cafe near Patterson Park. Graham arrived first. He stood when Evie entered. For 1 second, hope transformed his face. Then he saw the gold band. Sienna sat near the window. She looked smaller than Evie remembered. No perfect makeup, no carefully arranged tears. Just exhaustion. Evie took the chair across from them. Graham began immediately. The article was not supposed to become that. So you spoke to someone. I spoke to a friend. You described me as unstable. I was angry. Sienna looked at him. You said she was using Roman. Graham turned toward her. I said I did not understand what she was doing. Evie watched them begin to shift blame between each other. The pattern had survived her absence. She raised one hand. Both became quiet. Graham looked at her. I ended things with Sienna. Sienna's face tightened. He stopped answering me after the news came out. Graham ignored her. I made the worst mistake of my life. Evie believed him. That did not make the mistake reversible. You did not lose me when I found you, she said. You lost me every time you let me carry a life you called ours. I can change. Maybe. Hope appeared again. Evie continued. But I will not be the place where you practice. Sienna looked down at the table. I am sorry. Evie studied her. Sienna's voice did not tremble for effect. I wanted someone to choose me, she said. Then when you left, Graham acted like I was the reason everything was ruined. Graham looked at her. You were part of it. So were you. Evie almost laughed. They had wanted each other only while the betrayal belonged to Evie. Without her at the center, there was nothing holding them together. Sienna wiped her eyes. I know you may never forgive me. Evie looked at the sister she once carried through thunderstorms. I hope you become someone who does not need to steal love to feel visible. Sienna's mouth trembled. But I will not stand nearby while you learn. Evie rose. Graham reached for her hand. He stopped before touching it. You are not this person. Evie looked down at him. You never knew enough about me to decide who I am. She left the cafe. Rain had begun outside, not heavy, only a steady gray curtain over the city. Evie drove back to the DeLuca estate alone. She had the annulment papers inside her bag. At the first gate, no guard appeared. Evie slowed. The iron doors stood open. The security camera above them had been destroyed. She pressed Roman's contact. No answer. Her pulse changed. She drove faster. The courtyard lights were shattered. A black vehicle stood near the entrance with both front doors open. Evie stopped and stepped outside. The estate was silent. She entered through the main hall. A chair lay broken near the staircase. Blood marked the marble floor. Nico. No answer. She moved toward the study. The door hung open. Roman's desk had been overturned. The annulment papers he had prepared lay scattered across the floor. A message covered the wall behind the desk. The words were written in blood. Bring me the wife, or Baltimore loses the king. Evie stared at the words until fear hardened into focus. Footsteps sounded behind her. Nico entered with blood on his collar and one arm pressed against his ribs. 3 other men followed him. They took Roman through the service entrance, he said. Marzano had people inside the security team. How long ago? 20 minutes. One of the captains looked toward the ruined study. We gather everyone and hit every Marzano property. No, Evie said. The men turned toward her. That is what he wants. She walked to the wall and studied the message again. The blood had been painted carefully. The letters were too controlled for an escape made under pressure. This is theater. He wants us angry enough to stop thinking. Nico's jaw tightened. Roman is out there, I know. Evie picked up the overturned desk phone and connected it to the backup network. Bring Elliot here. Elliot arrived under guard. His face changed when he saw the blood. Evie placed the compromised phone in front of him. Contact the number Marzano used. He will know something is wrong. Tell him Roman's captains are fighting. Tell him I am frightened and willing to trade the trust documents. Nico looked at her. We cannot give him those documents. We are not going to. Elliot sent the message. A response appeared less than a minute later. Pier 17. Midnight. The wife comes alone. Evie opened a port map. Pier 17 was exposed, visible from 3 roads and surrounded by abandoned buildings. Too obvious. She compared it with the shell companies she had uncovered. One property stood several miles east, a private container yard controlled through Marzano's cousin. The trust dispute had begun there. That is where Roman is, she said. Nico studied the map. Why? Because Marzano does not only want the trust. He wants Roman to lose it on the ground where their fathers first fought over the port. The men looked at one another. Evie began issuing instructions. Elliot would send Marzano confirmation that she was coming. Roman's people would hide inside empty containers surrounding the yard. The gates and lights would be connected to a remote control system. Every shell account linked to Marzano would be sent to federal investigators before Evie entered the property. Nico watched her. "You are planning to walk in alone. He will not speak freely if he sees an army. He may kill you." Evie slipped Roman's plain gold band back onto her finger. "Then make sure he does not have time." Fog covered the container yard near midnight. Steel walls rose on both sides of Evie as she walked beneath the floodlights. Her heels struck the concrete with slow, measured steps. Roman stood at the center of the yard. His hands were tied behind a chair. Blood marked his mouth and one eye had swollen nearly shut. Vincent Marzano stood beside him holding a pistol. "You came," Vincent said. Evie stopped several yards away. "You asked for the wife." Roman lifted his head. His voice was rough. "You should not be here." Evie looked at him. "You gave me the choice." Vincent smiled. How touching. A table waited beneath the lights. Legal documents rested on its surface. Vincent gestured toward them. "You sign over Roman's voting authority. You receive money protection and a life far from Baltimore." Evie approached the table. "You expect me to believe you would let either of us leave? I expect you to understand that Roman made you feel powerful because it made you easier to keep." Evie read the documents. Vincent continued. "You were useful for a few days. That does not make you his equal." Evie reached the final page. Then she smiled. Vincent's expression changed. "What is amusing your attorney?" She lifted the document. "This clause transfers temporary authority to a holding company if you are arrested or killed." Vincent glanced toward the man standing behind him. The attorney went pale. Evie continued. "The holding company belongs to him." Several of Vincent's men turned toward the lawyer. "He built himself an exit using your empire." Vincent raised the pistol. The yard lights went dark. Container doors opened around them. Gunfire cracked through the fog. Evie dropped behind the table. Roman drove his shoulder into the guard beside him and struck the man to the ground. Nico's men moved through the darkness with controlled bursts of fire. Emergency lights flashed red. Vincent grabbed Evie by the hair and pulled her upright. Cold metal pressed beneath her jaw. "Stop!" he shouted. The shooting ended. Roman stood several feet away with a gun in his hand. Blood ran from his temple. Vincent dragged Evie backward. "You built an empire around a woman," he said. "Now watch her die." Roman raised the weapon. Evie met his eyes. Then she looked toward Vincent's wrist. Roman understood. He lowered the gun slightly. Vincent laughed. Evie drove her heel down onto his foot and struck his injured wrist with both hands. The pistol fell. Roman crossed the distance before Vincent could recover. He slammed him against a container and pressed the gun beneath his chin. Vincent smiled through blood. "Do it." Roman's finger tightened. Evie stepped beside him. "No." Roman looked at her. "He will come back. Not where he is going." Sirens approached from beyond the gates. Federal vehicles entered the yard. Agents surrounded Vincent, his attorney, and the surviving men. The evidence Evie released had connected Marzano to bribery, fraud, kidnapping, and illegal freight operations. Roman lowered the gun. Vincent was taken away alive, shouting threats no one answered. When the yard became quiet, Roman turned toward Evie. "You walked into a trap. So did you." His hand touched her face. For once, there was no control in his expression, only fear arriving after the danger had passed. "You could have died. So could you. That is different." Evie stepped closer. "No, that is the point." Weeks later, Roman placed the annulment papers on the same metal desk where they had signed their marriage license. Morning light filled the warehouse. "The trust is secure," he said. "Marzano cannot reach you. Nothing is forcing you to remain." Evie picked up the papers. Roman watched her without moving. She tore them in half. "I am not staying because you protected me." His breathing changed. "I am staying because you opened the door when locking it would have been easier." She placed the torn pages on the desk. "But I will not stand behind you while men decide what happens to my life." Roman stepped closer. "What do you want a seat beside you? The truth even when it is ugly. A voice in every decision that carries my name. And if I refuse," Evie looked at him, "then marrying me will become the most expensive mistake you ever made." A slow smile touched his mouth. "I suspected it already was." Later, the DeLuca council gathered around the long table. Evie sat in the chair at Roman's right. A Newport agreement rested before her. She turned to the final page. 3 hidden penalties, 2 false companies, 1 clause designed to reopen Marzano's roots. A captain leaned forward. What do we do? Evie picked up a pen. We rewrite it. Roman placed his hand beside hers. Not over it, beside it. The first time Evelyn Hart signed her name beside Roman DeLuca's, she had been running from a ruined life. The second time she was deciding what their empire would become.